Good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by a veteran, a leader in his community. Welcome, Chris Hoffman.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here, and I thank you for having me on.
Well, I thank you for your service. And you chose continuing service through the American Legion. You are a leader for the American Legion here in Clovis.
Correct.
What post is that?
American Legion, Cecil Cox, Post 147.
147.
Yes, sir.
Well, it's a great facility. My group actually uses it. We rent it out from you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another bonus that you help the community in another way, even people that aren't veterans, by renting the hall at a very reasonable rate.
Correct. And that's one of the things that supplies funding to the programs that we do. So we own that building. We've had it for over 100 years, and we're glad to rent it out, and it helps pay the bills so that we can actually support our programs.
Well, that's great. I love the facility. I love going downstairs, and you see the history. You've got a picture of every commander, or post. Is it post commander? Is that the right term?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you just see some history. It's like looking at Clovis history. So
Ab-
Clovis is, for my non-California listeners, that is Clovis, California, right in the heart of agriculture, most productive farm area. We're either the number 1 or number 2 county, depending on the year and which crops are more successful. But we're always 1 or 2 fighting with Tulare County.
Correct.
So you started in the military.
I did.
So how'd you serve? What would you do?
Well, after graduating from Clovis High School, I went directly into the Air Force, served 25 years as a aircraft crew chief. Now it's called aircraft manager, but it's basically the maintenance on the aircraft. So you learn the whole entire aircraft pretty much, and then you take care of its operation.
So you were Air Force.
Yes, sir.
I don't believe you said that part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You talked about aircraft, but
No.
you know, Navy does do a little bit with planes, and Army does a little bit with planes.
A little bit. But we lead the way.
Well, there's no doubt when it comes to being in the Air Force definitely does. So how long were you with the military? Were with the Air Force?
I was 25 years.
25 years. So
Yes. Yep, absolutely. I did. I enjoyed it, and I got to a point where I had to make a decision, and the decision was had a line number for moving up on a promotion, but because there was such a backlog, they kind of gave me a choice. Said, we can give you a bonus and some early time out, or you can just wait it out. And I decided to go back to college. So I took the early time out, the bonus, went back to school. Got a degree in business management with minors in marketing and logistics, statistics.
well, an awful lot of even retired military.
Mm-hmm.
They can't just sit there, even though they have a retirement. Probably
Right.
not as good a retirement as they should
Mm-hmm.
get, nonetheless, because let's face it, military doesn't get paid very much. Your benefits are somewhat okay, though my dad, being a veteran, has a lot of complaints about the VA.
Mm-hmm.
To put your life on the line, we don't seem to value them enough. That's a problem.
I believe that's the truth, is a lot of people don't realize the sacrifice that both the veteran and his family endure in the time, because there's so many times that there's separations, moving to what they call isolated tours, where family doesn't follow on. I know I spent time in Germany. That was a 4-year tour, but I had family. But I also spent time in Korea, which is an isolated tour. So I spent a year there without family. So there's separation, and people don't realize that in that separation, the spouse remains at home taking care of the business for the family.
It's not just that. You were in the military. How'd your First Amendment rights go?
You still have the freedom to do a lot of things.
Right, but you do give up some of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Think of it as you're on the job 24/7. It's like my First Amendment rights, if I worked for somebody, would be somewhat limited because my boss could fire me.
Hmm.
Well, you have even bigger consequences in the military if you say the wrong thing and mouth off to the wrong person.
Oh, absolutely. You can. The Uniform Code of Military Justice takes care of business there, and there are certain rules that apply to military members, to veterans, that probably go above and beyond the civilian world.
Well, you don't really have a Second Amendment right, even though at times, upon the orders of your superiors, you can carry a gun and do what you want, but you don't have the same Second Amendment rights.
You can't carry
Right.
while on duty unless they issue it to you.
Right.
I know when I spent my first tour of duty overseas, as soon as I arrived on station, that's one of the first things they did. They says, "Here's your weapon."
Mm-hmm. And then you have an entirely different justice system.
Correct. Absolutely.
So I don't understand that justice system really well, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But what people have to realize is you gave up sacrifices in multiple ways. You took less pay, generally because you were patriotic.
Correct.
Some people just wanted to use it so that it was their way up, so that they got a chance to go to college at a better rate. But most people, pretty much almost every veteran I've ever met or current service member, they joined because they believe in this country and they're there to defend our rights.
Exactly, and that was my reasoning. Is I've always believed that it was my obligation, my duty, to serve in that capacity. But the other thing was too is I just wanted to be around airplanes. I wanted to fly. I wanted to work on them. I wanted to touch them. I wanted to be around them every day.
Well, and you got to go with not just jets. I mean, not just like airliners.
Right.
Those are jets, but I mean, those are boring as opposed to fighter planes and all those other cool things.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously on aircraft that serve in the military, there are weapon systems. There's many other things, bits and pieces that aren't on civilian airliners. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a lot more risk and a lot more potential and a whole lot more speed.
True, absolutely. And for us, the responsibility, when I say they've changed it to aircraft manager, it used to be that when you arrived on station, you were assigned to an aircraft, and that was yours, and you could put your name on it somewhere. But as time progressed, they realized that you're more than just a maintainer. You're more than just a person working on that aircraft. So they changed it to aircraft manager. And you actually take responsibility when you arrive on station. You basically sign for that aircraft and say, "This is mine," and everything that happens to it, you're managing the operation and the maintenance on that aircraft to make sure it can fit the mission that's required at that particular time.
Well, it kind of gives you ownership of it in a way.
Absolutely.
It also creates responsibility. You're accountable.
Right.
Something that we've lost in society, but thank goodness the military typically still. You have a set of standards. There's an accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those are some very American things that in a lot of places we've kind of forgotten.
Right. I mean, when you get off an aircraft, when you're taking care of it, you have a set of forms, and those forms are the record of the maintenance and the things that take place for that aircraft. So if there's something that happens incorrectly, a plane crash, God forbid, something like that, that's the first thing that the investigating teams look at. They start looking at that stuff because they want to know what was the cause, and that's going to be a part of it. They're going to look at the maintenance, what happened, who was involved, and that's how they determine what the cause of the accident was.
I think that's a big deal. I think one of the other places, and I've had uncles, my dad, my grandpa, my other grandpa, all talk about this. If people can't are just on the radio, my skin's pretty white. I'm Caucasian. I'm basically a European mutt. But when I talked about all of those family members that did serve, I didn't serve, but all those family members that did serve, they got to see not only the world, but a diversity of people. And then they began to embrace this idea of, well, they're just people. I think it did a lot to break down barriers because you have to trust the person you're serving with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter what color they are, do they take care of business?
Right. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I think is a good part of being a veteran, being a military member, is you do get that. You're colorblind for all intents and purposes. You have to learn to work with everyone, no matter who they are, where they came from, their background, their education. You're all working towards a common goal. You're all working towards the same thing. And the other part is being assigned in other parts of the world. You learn about other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the value of that education in and of itself is important, because when we come home, we have a better understanding of how the world works, not just
our way.
Our way. And I think I've seen that difference with some of the people I know. I have a different perspective than they do, and when you talk about their experiences, you realize they're more local. They're more not isolated. That's not the right word, but they're not as worldly experienced. They don't have that experience of other cultures. And when you go to other places, that's one of the first things the military's always did when I was there, is one of the first things you did when you arrived on station. There's an orientation, and they tell you about customs and courtesies of where you're stationed.
Well, so you don't go out and do something stupid.
Exactly. So you don't go out and violate somebody, or make someone angry, or do something that's against their laws and customs. And you want to avoid that. You want to be the best ambassador to our way of life as we can be.
Something else I've noticed at veterans, again, have multiple friends, multiple family members. They tend to be patriotic. Part of that experience of going out and seeing the world made them more appreciative of the absolute blessings that we have here that are enshrined in the Constitution.
I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly, that when you look around and you see veterans, and this is one of the reasons why I belong to the American Legion, is the first and foremost thing that members of the American Legion join for is connectivity. They want to be with other people who have similar experiences, can talk the same talk they talk, and it's
and understand their issues.
Right, absolutely. I mean, even though we may be married, for instance, my wife and we've been married 30 years. She doesn't always understand my thinking, my logic, my thought processes, the things that I do and how I take them. She's often said that the American Legion is my mistress. So, because I spend so much time there. And this is why one of the reasons, one I was saying earlier when you were out talking before we went on, we've been married 30 years, and she said, we're done. It's time for you to come back to me. And I said, that's fair. So I'm finishing up my role where I'm at now. And then next year I'm going to step back to just being a member of the American Legion, doing my part. But
so you only be involved like 20 or 30 hours a week.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because it's funny. I do, as in the position that I'm in right now, I do receive phone calls all hours of the day and night. What do we do about this? How can we do this? Can we do that? We're having a problem with, and it's like, okay. So, it's problem solving and just making sure everybody's on the same path.
Who's eligible to be part of the American Legion?
So it used to be that the American Legion had eras that you had to be participating in. But in 2019, President Trump signed what they call the Legion Act, which changed all that. So now any member who has served 1 day of honorable active duty service is eligible to join the American Legion.
So that's anything beyond day one after boot camp? Or does that include boot camp?
That includes boot camp.
Okay.
So the minute you receive your orders to go to basic training, boot camp, those are federal orders. So once you get in there, you started that process right then and there. You become eligible as long as you remain honorable.
Got it. So, well, that's fair. How long has the American Legion been around?
So, excuse me. The American Legion, the process started in 1919 after World War One. Members of the American Expeditionary Force got together and started the process. Took a couple of years, but they were congressionally chartered in 1921. So they're celebrating their 104th year, 105th year, being the largest veteran service organization advocating for veteran benefits.
How do you go about advocating for veteran benefits?
So our membership, as a member, you're one of those, for lack of a better word, numbers that when our national commander regularly goes to Congress, he's making reports as to what we do, what we've done, how we're helping veterans in our communities. So he's talking to Congress all the time, and especially when things appear out there like the PACT Act, the burn pit situation, all of those things, he's advocating for them to support that. He goes to...
So what is the PACT Act? Because a lot of my people will not know that.
So a PACT Act, it's PACT Act. Basically, it is recognizing the health issues that are associated with having been around burn pits, which burn pits are basically where in a war situation they were taking care of the latrines, so on and so forth. They put them in a pit and they burn what's there. So,
and they probably used some sort of flammable, something that causes problems in addition.
Correct. So, however it's burning, you're exposed to the smoke and the burn fumes and so on and so forth. So all of those. So other things that are included are the foam that firefighters used to use, what they call brown water Navy exposure to Agent Orange, all of those things that created medical issues and health issues among veterans, and that were not being recognized by the Veterans Administration or by the government as things to compensate for disability reasons. And that changed all that. So it gave an opening. It opened the door for so many veterans to actually go back to and file claims for dispensation and disability ratings.
Well, I know you've got a lot to say about that, because I remember a story I heard you speak recently, but we're not going to have time for that whole story. So do you go before legislatures also?
Right. So,
not just national, but each individual state. Are you also?
Correct. Right. So in our way, we do get to, we've got a good relationship with Jim Patterson. He's always been a good supporter of ours, and a good case in point is the Fresno Veterans Home here. A number of years ago, some of the members of the American Legion, and he went to Congress, or not Congress, but to the Sacramento, and they talked about it because a governor wanted to cancel the program, and they fought to get it, and now we have that here, and it's one of the best in the nation.
Well, there are some things to be proud of, which we will get to. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I want to say thank you to everybody that's watching, whether you're on the radio or you're on social media. I've got now some shows on Apple Podcasts, some shows on Spotify. I'm all over Facebook. I've got a foothold on X, a little bit on Telegram, a little bit on Instagram. It's generally a successful show, and it's successful because of you, the listeners, so I want to say thank you. Please like, please subscribe, please hit the bell notifications if appropriate, please comment. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by Chris Hoffman from the American Legion Post. I cannot remember. It's the Cecil Cock Post, but I remember the number.
147.
147, right here in Clovis, California, right in the heart of California. And we're kind of just letting you know about what the American Legion does. You just mentioned the Veterans Home. California has more veterans per capita in the Central Valley than I believe just about anywhere.
Correct. It is a large population. Probably the largest is actually south of the Grapevine, the mountain, and down in L.A., San Diego areas, just because of who they are in the large cities. But yeah, once you get on this side, the valley has a large percentage of veterans.
See, I think we have a higher percentage. I think they have bigger numbers.
Correct. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we try to gain and have talked to on both sides is reaching the percentages that we're missing. It seems that there's a lack of knowledge maybe, or a lack of willingness to approach the resources that are available to us. Like here we have our Air National Guard base. We have an Army Guard unit. So we've got some access to, we have the Student Veterans Association out at Fresno State. So we have accessibility.
And a VA hospital
And
here.
a VA hospital.
Not everybody has one.
Right. So when we have those things, are we talking to those resources and saying, hey, we're here for you. Be a member of this, and you can be a part of what we do. As we've talked about today, those numbers matter. So when our commander goes to the, national commander goes to Congress and he starts speaking, hey, we're 2 million strong, that has power. Mm-hmm. And that moves people. A lot of people don't understand that he has to speak with numbers because less than 1% of our congressional members have served in the military. So it's
That's a small number.
Yeah.
That's kind of mind-blowing.
Right. And that's the thing is when they start talking about where do we get money from, where do they start looking? And they're looking places like, the military programs and, so on and so forth. And that's us standing in the way saying, no, this is ours and we need to keep this, if anything, and grow it rather than reduce it.
One other thing that I think is really neat is we have a huge Veterans Day parade. I know it's coming up. I don't remember exactly when. I should know, and shame on me. Is that...
We do, and as a matter of fact, it's been touted as the largest this side of the Mississippi.
I recently heard somebody that's in charge of the parade. They came to the Clovis City Council meeting, and they said, no, it's no longer the largest west of the Mississippi. It's the largest.
Okay, so that's a very possible...
even if it's close, wow.
Yeah. So that speaks to the dedication and the honor that our communities give to veterans and what they've done and what they continue to do.
Do veterans vote?
Absolutely.
So do they vote at higher percentages than unfortunately most of the world or most of the U.S.?
I don't know.
I hope so.
I would think so. I would, because I know that we're very active in promoting, especially bills and legislature that improve the lives of veterans, their families, and our communities. So when it comes to speaking to that, and there's propositions or voting on those things, we stand there saying we support these things. We do have a legislative body in Sacramento that follows and talks to them, kind of a lobbyist. As a matter of fact, it is a lobbyist.
Well,
so,
you
right.
kind of have to be a lobbyist, whether you're a paid one or a nonprofit one, and I assume it's a nonprofit organization.
The American Legion is nonprofit, but I do believe that there's probably a salary that goes into the lobby or some kind of
but that's different. That's different than a profit.
Right. Yes.
Nonprofits have paid people in many cases.
Correct.
One of the things I loved about when I talk to friends about the military is the whole idea of meritocracy, which I believe is essential to the American idea. What were your experiences with that?
Well, so the American Legion is an all volunteer force.
Okay.
So
is our current military.
right. So, but when the military does get benefits and pay, we don't. So that's the difference, I think, is we all join knowing that we have volunteers, and we don't ask everyone to volunteer for everything. Minimally, we say, hey, if you can give us 1 hour a month, we're happy, and we'll do it. But we do ask for participation and attendance to the things that we do. And again, as volunteers, so you can make your choices. We have so many programs, so it's pick the ones you're most passionate about, and get involved.
Well, I would bet that somebody that's willing to join an organization and volunteer is probably doing more than the average person. That we are shifting away from that. My generation and younger, I'm 55, we don't join things very often.
Correct. And that's one of the issues we encounter every day is we have to learn about our audience, and we have to find and make our posts something that they want to be a part of. We have to make our organization something they want to be a part of. So we have to offer them the information and say, this is about you. This is for you. This is about your family. This is for your family. And by doing that, we're veterans strengthening America. And that's the American Legion motto, pretty much, is veterans strengthening America.
So what does it cost to join?
So it does vary. To join our post, Cecil Cox Post 147, it's $40 a year right now.
Oh, so not much of anything.
No. And it varies, depends. I mean, there's a post down in the Los Angeles area where there's like $300 and some odd dollars. But that gives them, they happen to be Newport Beach. So
if you can live in Newport Beach, most people are doing pretty well.
Right. But being a member of that post, part of those dues gives you the privilege of the marina that it's attached to. So,
that's pretty good motivation, because I don't think you could join a marina for $300.
Right. So I mean, that's the number that I've heard. I'm not absolutely positive, but I know a lot of people say, hey, they're probably one of the highest. But I would say the average is probably $45 a year.
So relatively inexpensive.
Correct.
You have monthly meetings?
We do.
And that's kind of normal for the American Legion. They have monthly meetings?
Yes. So, and those vary too, depending on the day of the week. Cecil Cox Post 147, we meet on the second Wednesday of each month. We begin gathering about 5:30 in the afternoon on the second Wednesday. That's kind of a social time. We have a dinner at 6, and then we meet and begin our meetings at 7 p.m.
So it's a social as well as you do multiple good works.
Absolutely, yes.
So what are the good works? I know you're involved in various things. So actually tell me how you raise your money first, and then let's go into a little bit of, there's multiple programs and things that this post helps do.
Right. So again, each post has its own personality, so they do different things to earn or fundraise. In our case, like we kind of talked about earlier, we rent our building, so that's one of the ways that we make a little bit of money. We have been involved in the Clovis Rodeo for over 100 years, and that's our biggest fundraiser each year. So we currently spend all 5 days. We have 4 booths out there that we make money from during those 5 days.
So you must need significant staff to pull that off.
Absolutely. It takes about 45 volunteers per day to staff those operations.
Wow.
So yeah, so we're looking at least 45 members each day through those days, and we do offer that back out. So one of the things that we do is we collaborate with our sister VFW. They provide some of that volunteer. We provide some help with the Blue Star Moms. We've done that in the past. So there's other groups that we ask to help staff that, because as we get older, we have less stamina and energy to be out there, especially when the temperatures get up there a little bit, and so that's one of the things that we do. Is we spend all 5 days, and again, that's our largest fundraiser of the year.
That's mid-April.
That's the last weekend of April.
Last weekend in April. Okay.
Right. And then we also do a fireworks booth, which we spend about 5 days doing fireworks. That gives us a little bit of income. But each one of those, we're able to take that money and turn it back into profitable things such as
Well, you got to maintain the building, pay the property tax, but after that,
then we're supporting our programs, American Legion Baseball, the VA. Some of we donate. We had a golf tournament. Our 11th annual golf tournament is done over Memorial Day, the weekend before Memorial Day, and we've pretty consistently provided to our VA hospital here $20,000 each year, roughly. That's about an average, I would say. So that's so all of the money that we make from that golf tournament goes back to the VA, and it supports volunteers programs. So it's in addition to what they can't provide from their government budget. That's how this goes in there. So when a veteran has a need to be transported for, say, like cancer treatments,
which might not be this hospital, it might be somewhere across the country.
Correct. So some of that money may support getting that veteran to and from those treatments. So
I know a Marine that's currently doing that.
Right. So, and I mean, so other things happen, but we have a good transparency program with them. The folks over there at the VA, if it's something that we've not regularly said they can use, they will ask, "Can we do this?" And we take it back to our membership and ask, "Is it okay for them to do this?" So
you're essentially a support organization in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, that's exactly what we do. We support as much as we can. We have those programs out there for veterans. We give away scholarships, tons of money in scholarships. We have an oratorical scholarship program that's done each year right after the first of the year. The winner, the last national winner, walked away with over $25,000 in scholarship money.
Wow.
Each level, they start at a post level. This is a constitutional oratorical program. So all of the subject matter that the students, high school students, it's open to high school students.
So how would they find you? They just go to the American Legion and search the website for scholarships, or?
So we usually have a team that goes into and speaks to the counselors at the school. Okay. Tell them what we're looking for. They get the word down to the students, and then the students
apply that way.
Apply that way, sure. And that's how we do Boys and Girls State. So we have and the Boys and Girls State program is a week-long program that we currently hold up at Sacramento State, and then it's a week-long program.
What kind of numbers?
The last couple of years we had about 1,000 students, just shy of 1,000 students are from the state of California, are selected to go to this program. It's a week-long program, and they learn about government. And they were able to build their own governments from the top to the bottom, from the lowest community or city organization all the way up to Supreme Court, to the, when they get to Boys Nation, it's actually like being president of the United States. So they're making decisions that way to support these cities.
So it's essentially a civics experiment.
Absolutely, yes.
Or a civics education, which is lacking.
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, so that's been around, I believe, for almost 100 years, if not 100 years. So I know they've been doing that program for quite some time, and it's a very successful program. And this is one way. As a matter of fact, here, not this year, but the year before, I was a counselor up there. I was so impressed at these students. These young individuals come in there, and you kind of, being a new counselor to the program, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to be I'm going to have to be ready and prepared and have some education and some insight myself. But by the third day, second or third day, they were on their own. They were going for it, and we were able to step back and just watch. So you're there basically as a guide, as a counselor. If they doing the right thing, or you're making recommendations, but they're making the choices and the decisions of what to do.
Are those students patriotic? Because I so frequently hear an older generation talk about the younger generation, say they're not patriotic.
I believe they are, because every morning there is a gathering in which there's the raising of the flag. Every afternoon there's the bringing down, and the whole thing, reveille and the national anthem and everything, and they properly respond to those moments. So yeah, I believe there is probably a higher degree of patriotism amongst the ones that are attending.
Well, it's got to start somewhere. If we don't believe in this country, if we're not patriotic, that younger generation, if they're not patriotic, are they going to join a volunteer military force? Probably not.
Probably not.
So this matters, because those dots have to connect. The truth is, the world is an ugly place in a lot of ways. And war seems to be our solution to that ugliness.
Correct.
Which is never good for anybody, but I don't know what you do about it. I'd say most wars bad, and World War I and World War II, evil forces needed to be stopped.
Correct.
And we're the ones that stepped up.
Right.
A lot of these smaller wars, it's not clear to me.
So the smaller wars, and it's protecting our investment, and trying to retain that freedom, out there, the democracy in the world, and that's what we're trying to slow down. So when we get to these smaller wars, we're trying to intervene and protect our investments. So if they're starting to get close to places that we have an investment in, and I get it. Lots of times it may be oil, it may be...
It tends to be resources.
Resources.
Or access to things like, not necessarily access to water, though that's a big one.
Right.
But shipping channels, things like that.
Absolutely. And that's what you're doing, is you're protecting those lanes. We're talking about the pirates off the coast of Africa and what they're doing.
Off of East Africa, that's a real thing.
It is. And we try to protect that so that everybody who ships through there has the freedom to ship through there productively.
Mm-hmm. Well, everybody pays if crime is allowed to just run wild.
Correct.
And it's sad that in some cases we've got to be the policeman of the world. In some cases we do. I think we need to be smart about that. But in some cases, there's nobody else.
Right.
We're the beacon of freedom for the world, and I think people need to realize that while no country is perfect, I think there's more freedom and more opportunity here than anywhere else you're going to go.
I agree 100%. That, when we look at the numbers of people entering the United States from different countries, different stuff.
Yeah, legally or illegally, they still want to come.
Exactly.
We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I always like to focus on anything that is hope or solution in the last 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I am joined by a leader for the American Legion right here in Clovis, California. Welcome, Chris Hoffman.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So obviously, you spent a tremendous amount of time being a leader in the American Legion.
This is my 27th year being a member of the American Legion, correct?
And the last several you've been in leadership, or maybe even more than that.
Right. My first experience in leadership was probably within a couple of years of joining. I was a commander, post commander.
So you're the guy that when the opportunity was there, you step up.
Yes.
I find that a whole lot of the military people I know, when they see that something needs to be done, they're taught, okay, we need to take charge, we need to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up being leaders. It blows my mind that it's not a higher percentage than what you mentioned in Congress, that so few have served. But there are definitely some.
Mm-hmm.
And I know currently multiple candidates that are veterans that are running.
Right.
I think that part of what you need to have happen is having elected officials that both respect the military and maybe have some experience, maybe did serve, because they will understand a lot better. You told a story about how your retirement is affected that I was a little shocked and not okay with. You went through, you served honorably, and then you went through and went on to civilian life.
Correct.
And they're not giving you full pay in both places.
Correct.
Tell that story.
So this has been something that's been going on for a very long time. It's been in Congress, back and forth for many years. It once again is being presented, but it's called the concurrent pay program. So when I retired from the military, there's a military retirement amount of dollars based on your rank, time in service, time in grade, so on and so forth, that you're entitled to and receive. When you go to the VA and you apply at the VA and you apply for disability benefits, they provide you with a rating. And based on that rating, you earn so many dollars.
So how disabled they consider you?
Yes.
Okay.
So in my case, it's 60%. So there's a number there, and they figure that, however they figure the numbers out. But what happens is that number of dollars they take out of my military retirement, move over to the VA system so that they can pay me my disability.
So they're really not giving you disability if you're a veteran. They're simply playing a shell game where you're getting, as disability, your own money.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's why this bill keeps going in there and keeps pushing forward. And it's obvious, there's organizations like ours, like the American Legion, like the VFW, like Disabled Veterans of America, DAV, AMVETS, so on and so forth. We all stand there and we keep pushing this because we know it's not right. It's unfair to those that have served. That, if I've served my time, why should I not be getting my full retirement, but additionally being compensated for the harm that we endured being part of that, in so many ways. We're physically, mentally, and often, not that this gets compensated, but spiritually, we're harmed, and we have remaining issues that come from those days and that service and that dedication to being involved in the military for as long as we did. And when they sit there and they just say, hey, we're going to cut your military retirement in half so we can pay you for your disability, it's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
It's just not logical. But the answer that seems to be the one is, where are we going to get the money from? If we do give you both, we've got to find somewhere else in the national budget to take the money from to pay that. And that seems to be the argument why it keeps getting defeated and put aside.
Okay, but you worked and served, and they talk about how Social Security and Medicare, they're going to go broke. Yet we always seem to have money for welfare programs. Now, I know you don't want to get into politics very much. I understand, but the idea that somebody worked and served and they're not justly compensated, and somebody that, and I get that some people that are on welfare can't, but I would bet the vast majority of them can do more than they think they can and could be a lot closer to a productive citizen, even if they still needed some help. You didn't ask for help. You volunteered and went and served. And if you got injured along the way while serving, you're not being justly compensated for that. That just seems wrong.
I I agree, and this is why I am part of the organizations that I am, and that's why I continue to want to be part of the leadership, is so that we can continue to promote the injustices that are there, and try to inform and educate everybody, not only your politicians but the public, and as to just what you just said. We voluntarily joined a system. We knew the risks, and yet we do it anyway, and we continue to do it. And yeah, some serve the minimum, some go as far as they can, and continue to do it. But the whole time, we know what the risks are, and we do it because we love our country. We do it because we love what it stands for.
Well, right now, and again, I'm doing my best to not put you into the middle of politics, but we have more veterans that are homeless, that are really not being helped. Yet we've thrown open our border. I don't expect you to comment on the border half of it, but the other half of it is just wrong. We shouldn't be having both these things happen at once.
And I agree. But let's understand the homeless situation as it applies to veterans. In so many cases, they don't want help. They're there because they've chosen to be there for whatever reason. And that's not that we can't continue to try to help them. We should. We should always be out there advocating to find a way to make their lives better as well. But we have to, again, like I said earlier, understand the audience, as far as the audience that joins the American Legion, what we have to do. Same thing, we have to understand, why are they there? Why is that? Why are those homeless people there? And why do they object so much to being helped?
Somehow they're disconnected from society.
Yes.
We're down to about a minute and a half. Why are you hopeful? Why should you join the American Legion? What's your pitch?
So, joining the American Legion, basically, it's selfless service, continued volunteerism, to support programs that improve the lives of other veterans, and their families. Those numbers, because of, like I said, because of not knowing or understanding, we're in decline, and it's valuable for us that there's a force to stand out there and advocate and say to the politicians and continue to advocate for the rights, for the justices, for the all the right things. How do we compensate? How do we give tribute to those that have done that, voluntarily joined a military operation, knowing the risks? And that's what we need the members for, is for us to be able to, starting out in our communities, but then eventually growing it. But when our national commander goes to Congress, he can use the power of numbers to get them to move.
Well, I do believe that volunteering absolutely changes your perspective and makes you more hopeful, more appreciative of what you have. I thank you for this time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
No, glad to. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town.